and get started for the evening. So I want to welcome you to this workshop and also our presenter. She works in our human resource department. Her name is Jennifer Niebly, and she's a part of the San Diego County Office of Education. So Jennifer, thanks so much for joining us tonight, and I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Thank you, Jana. I'm going to throw my presentation up here onto the screen. Okay, so again, just a little bit about myself. Like Jana said, my name is Jen Nibley. I am the project specialist in human resources here at the San Diego County Office of Education. Just a little bit about me. I most recently came from the Poway Unified School District. I started there actually in working on site in a classroom on school sites, and kind of worked my way up into human resources there, and came here to the county at the end of last summer. So I'm really happy to be here giving you this presentation today. So let's get started. Maybe if I can make this work. Okay, oops. Sorry. Okay, now let's get started. Basically, what we're hoping for today, I'd like you to walk away with a better understanding of how to build your resume, the different components that you should have in your resume, and how each one of those is used. I'd also like you to be able to produce a resume that is able to clearly describe your skills, your achievements, your education, and that comes across in a really professional manner. You should be able to target your resume to the desired audience for the position that you're applying for. And then also we'll talk a little bit about some new resume reading technology that's being used in the field and how to optimize your resume for that technology. So we're going to start out here with an exercise. Let's pretend that you're the manager in charge of hiring an accountant from a list of 3 candidates. You're going to need to look, I'm going to throw on the screen some resumes for you to take a look at. You can only look at each resume for 20 seconds, no more, and I'll set a timer. And then we'll come back and discuss who you picked and why, and what was your process? How did you approach this task? And then we'll talk a little bit about this 20-second method. So I'm going to set my timer. And I will put up the first resume. Okay, and now we're going to move on to the next one. And the final. Oops. Okay, so we've taken a look at 3 resumes, 20 seconds each, and I'm just going to go back to that slide so we can discuss. If you want to hop in and unmute and just say, who did you pick and the reason why, feel free. Otherwise, if you want to, if you want to put that in the chat, you can. I may have trouble following along with the chat because I am sharing my screen. So feel free to unmute.
So you got one for the first, but then a lot it looks like for the third.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead again.
I
Oh,
chose
sorry.
the last one just because
The last
I
one.
felt much more organized and objective, so I knew even whether or not he had maybe as much experience or certain titles, he or she or they would be able to kind of work according to practically.
Okay, great. Thank you. So a lot of
Maya-
people saying the last one. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Maya looked like you were gonna say something. Did you want to share?
Oh, it was just pretty much the same thing. And the language was a lot stronger and it not only highlighted their strengths, but added adjectives to kind of augment or describe their skill or like the breadth of their experience with that skill. And then the first one wasn't bad, but it had some spelling mistakes and like formatting inconsistencies that kind of like bothered me a little.
Yeah, great. Okay, so it looks like a lot of people are saying the last resume and for kind of all the same reasons. And I'm just going to mention here, because I forgot to mention at the beginning, if anybody has a thought or a question, please just unmute yourself and jump right in and ask it. I'm going to try and keep an eye on the chat, and I know Jana will let me know if anything comes up. But just feel free to ask your questions when they hit you. So let's keep going. So does anybody want to share, like, what was your process? What approach did you take? Because with only 20 seconds to review, it's not very much time. So what made you decide to review it the way that you did?
Well, I liked the organization in number 3. I liked that it had a summary. That kind of gave me a snapshot of who I was looking at. Usually that's what I've done in the past when I've done hiring. I look for a snapshot and I look for longevity in the experience that they've had second.
Okay, so you're picking out certain areas that you were specifically digging in to look at. Great.
Yeah, I like to say the first one was good. It just the organization format of the third one had the first one kind of been in that format, I think would have been a strong resume as well. So it really was more organization, like Chris was saying, just the summary, the snapshot, the quick bullet points to get a lot of information across quickly is a lot better.
Right. So as you may have guessed, the whole purpose of this exercise is to show just how important formatting is. So, the content, yes, it's very important, but the way that you present it is even more so important, right? Because many recruiters are not even taking 20 seconds to look at a resume these days. I think when I was researching for this, it's actually like 6 seconds is the average time that somebody is looking at a resume. So you have 6 seconds to get your best points across. So do you think that this method is effective?
I don't know how effective it is, but I definitely think it's real.
Right. It is, because at the end of the day, a lot of recruiters are looking at, oh gosh, I mean, tens and tens and tens of resumes, right? Especially in different industries, they could be recruiting for several different types of positions at once. So you're having to work through a bulk of resumes and still try and get the best person for the position. So like you had mentioned, formatting is very important. When people are screening resumes, they're looking at your formatting. What's the most, what looks so, clear and organized, relevancy, like somebody had mentioned, job history, and the content in it. So let's move forward here. We'll move past these again. What is a resume? I know that many of you have already indicated that you're working on your resumes. You're in a pretty good spot. You're just looking for some fresh tips. But some of us are still starting off. So what is a resume? A resume is actually just a brief snap, right? You're just getting one quick snap looking at somebody's qualifications, their experience, their education, and it's building a picture for a potential employer on who is this person and how might they be right for the job. It's a way to introduce yourself to prospective employers, and hopefully the next step, secure an interview, right? So because this is your chance to really get in front of a prospective employer, it's important that you convey not just your, your education and your experience, but we want to see how, your passion. You guys are educators. You're in this industry for a reason, right? And we want to know that you're passionate about your job, about working with the community, student success and whatnot. So hopefully we can get your resume to convey that. When it comes to formatting, there are 3 different types of formats, and we'll talk about each one. There's a reason that you would use each one, and we'll talk about why and what might work best for your specific situation. So first up is the chronological resume. This is what you're probably most familiar with. If you have a resume, you've seen resumes, most of them are chronological. It's the most traditional format. So this one, it focuses really on your work history, right? So it's going to list your work history by date in reverse chronological order. So starting with your most recent position first and then working backwards from there. Again, it's highlighting your work history. So it's a little less focused on your skills and your qualifications and more so just on your work history. This is useful when your work history is consistent. You've stayed in the same field, right? You've moved up steadily in responsibilities. And so it shows growth. For instance, let's say, you were in you started out as an office assistant, and then a few years later you left and you promoted into a secretarial position, and then you promoted into an office manager, and then you're trying to get into an executive assistant type role. So it's showing growth. It shows that you've had no gaps in your employment history and you've stayed in the same field, like I mentioned. So for this type of resume, typically it's said that you should maybe put 10 to 15 years worth of relevant experience on your resume, assuming that you've stayed in those jobs for probably, on an average of 5 years each. You don't want to go showing if you've moved jobs every 1 to 2 years, all of those positions on your resume. Moving forward, here's an example of a chronological resume. So you can see here, John Smith, he's got his most recent position listed right there at the top. He's the editor-in-chief at the Daily Planet from 2010 to now. He's got 3 major bullet points of his work there. Prior to that, he was a managing editor at the Gotham Gazette. He was there for 3 years. Prior to that, he was a copy editor at the Daily Bugle. So here's a perfect example of somebody in the same field working his way up. He has his education listed there at the bottom. He finished his bachelor's degree in 2001, then went right into his master's work, finished that in 2005. And then you can see that goes right into his first job there at the Daily Bugle in 2006. So no gaps in his work history. He's highlighting his most recent accomplishments first there at the top as editor-in-chief, and his education closer to the bottom because, he got that back in 2001 and 2005. So there's a perfect example of a chronological resume and why he would have chosen that one. The next is a functional or a skills-based resume. So for this, you're highlighting less of your work experience and more of your skill sets. So you're highlighting your major areas of accomplishments, your strengths, your abilities, and that's geared towards that particular job or employer that you're looking to work for. This is useful when you may be changing careers. So if you have a career history in retail and you're ready to get into education, you've gone back to school, maybe you're re-entering the job market after an absence. So again, maybe you had that history of retail. You quit, you went back to school to get your degree, to change your career path, and you're coming back into the workforce. Maybe you took time off to raise a family. Maybe you have frequent gaps in employment, so you have a lot of seasonal work. Maybe you have had a variety of different unrelated jobs in different fields. So this is when you would want to use a skills-based resume. So even if you've just graduated, you can still list your accomplishments here, use your practicum experience, take your quotes from observations and evaluations and list that there. Those are all accomplishments, strengths, and abilities. Here's an example of a skills-based resume. So you can see here, Jonathan has his core competencies front and center right there up at the top. So he's highlighting his skills. Next up is his education. So that's one of his most recent accomplishments, right? So he got his bachelor's degree in civil engineering in 2003. His relevant project work for his degree is listed there. So those projects relate directly to this job that he's applying for. His selected achievements right under there. So he's listing, his important achievements in that field. And then there at the bottom, there's his employment history. So he's including it, but it's not being highlighted, right? Because you can see that he had some seasonal work, and his most recent position is a delivery crew, but he's trying to get into civil engineering. So it's related, but he's highlighting his most recent accomplishments. And the last step is our combination resumes. So these take the best of both, right? It's both the chronological and our skills-based. This is providing a strong skill summary up front, followed by your employment history. Your work history here will emphasize results in your positions rather than your job duties. So you would use something like this when you had similar job duties or the same job duties in all of your jobs. So you don't want to be listing the same functions over and over and over again, because that becomes redundant, right? So you want to highlight your skills and your achievements instead. You may want to use this also when you're trying to make a career change. Here's an example from Richard. So Richard is a sales professional. He has his history is in industrial sales, but he wants to move into pharmaceutical sales. So he's listing his skills there. He's got his most recent accomplishments. And here, this is going to be important to note, not only is he listing, saying that he was responsible for increasing overall sales, but he's giving us an actual number. So he's saying he achieved an 80% sales increase. He retained 50% of business. These are tangible numbers, right? And so that stands out to potential employers. That's an important piece. Then he goes on to list his professional experience. So here's his actual work experience at the Trent Corporation. And his bullet points, you'll notice he's not listing job duties necessarily. He's listing his accomplishments and highlights. And there at the bottom is his education. So he's got kind of a little bit from each of those formats that we talked about. Okay, so those are the different formatting choices that we can use, but no matter which format you decide to go with, all resumes should have the same components. They should have a heading, education, summary of qualifications, work experience, skills and abilities, and we'll talk a little bit about each component. So every resume needs a heading. The heading should include your name, Your address is optional. You don't have to add it, but you can if you choose to. It needs to include your phone number and it needs to include your email address because we need to know how to reach you. Just a little note on email addresses. If you are still using the email address that you first created when you were 12, like mine was beachbaby123@aol.com, please don't put that on your resume. You want to have a professional email. If you can't let go of that email address just yet and you're really stuck to it, create another one for professional use, please. It does make a big difference in how your resume is viewed. Once you do have those listed on your resume and your application, please be sure to check them because I can't tell you how many times I have personally seen people miss out on opportunities because they missed an email or they missed a phone call. They didn't check their voicemails. So be sure that you're checking those things regularly and return phone calls and emails. Okay, so education and credentials section. So obviously as teachers, you've got a lot of impressive items on your resume. Your education and certifications are one of those. So, and not to mention they are essential for the jobs that you're applying for. So for the employers to see. You're going to want to clearly feature your degree, including your major and your credential information. So you're going to also want to include any certifications, trainings, all of that should be featured prominently there on the first page because that's very important for the jobs that you're applying for. Summary of qualifications. So consider this is just, you're going to want to sit down and think about what are the things that I want to emphasize and highlight on my resume that show that I'm the best person for this job. When you're doing this, you're going to want to make sure that you have the job description there in front of you because you need to see, well, what are they looking for and how do I match that? How am I going to show that I have all of these qualifications and I'm the best person for that? So go back and provide data. Like I had mentioned in that resume that we took a look at, there was actual data and he was able to quantify that qualification. So, he increased sales by 80%. So you're going to want actual strong quantified data. It does make your resume stronger. Include 3 to 5 bulleted statements. So you don't want to have 25 bullets under each heading. It's too much. Like we showed at the very beginning, somebody's only spending sometimes 6 seconds looking at your resume. So you want to have it concise and clear. So not too much, enough to get the highlighted points across. So some example of some skills that you're going to want to include: technology skills, bilingual skills, leadership skills, any specialized trainings, some professional memberships that you have, organizational skills. So those are all things that you can highlight. This part is what's going to catch the attention of potential employers. So it is valuable resume real estate. Utilize it. Okay, so the work experience section. Like we said just a minute ago, this is going to be given in reverse chronological order because we do care more about your most recent positions than we do the ones that you held 15 years ago. So highlight that. It's you are growing in your career, and so you want to show your most recent growth, right? You don't need to list every job you've ever held. Again, this goes back to relevancy, right? You're going to list the jobs that are most recent, most relevant. It is required that you put the position title of your work experience. You're going to have the name of the company and the dates of your employment there. So you don't have to have the exact dates, but you should have the month and the year. Use language from the job description. Again, when you're creating your resume, have the job description for the job that you are interested in right there, and pull that language over and use that in your work experience so you can show that in your previous positions you did do these things. It's going to help. It makes it a clear connection for the recruiter to see, and also it helps with the resume software that we'll talk about in just a little bit. List your accomplishments, list your results. Again, not every single job duty, but you want to focus more on your accomplishments at those positions and the results that you got. That's what's important to employers. Okay, so diversity and inclusion, these are really important in this day and age, especially in education, right? It's a very important topic. We want to make sure that we're providing education to all of our community. And so, excuse me, employers are looking for employees who can help to do that, who have a history of diversity and inclusion. So you're going to want to emphasize this on your resume. If you have bilingual skills, make sure that you note that. If you have previous experience working with diverse teams, you're going to want to make sure you note that too. Any volunteer work that you have, if you sit on any committees that serve the underserved communities, any professional development activities that you've been a part of. These are all important because we do want to make sure that we're helping to serve our underserved communities. And so this will make your resume stand out. A little note about blind hiring there. What that is it's removing name, age, gender, address, and educational institutions from resumes. And what that does is really gives you a completely unbiased look at a candidate. So it's only focusing on skills and abilities. And so the hope there is that it builds a very diverse pool of employees that will obviously then help to spread out into really, diverse and inclusive education. Okay, so we've talked about what you should have on your resume, and now we'll talk a little bit about what you should not have on your resume. Don't list interests and hobbies unless they are relevant to the position. So I love going to the beach and hiking and camping, but I'm not going to put that on my resume because it does not relate to the job that I am looking to get. Volunteering, absolutely. Please list it if it's relevant to what you're trying to get. Let's say, though, that you are trying to get into the field of outdoor education. And so maybe you want to mention that on the weekends, you lead field groups out into the Bataguitos Lagoon to, remove invasive species and educate the public on those species. So just think about whether or not it's relevant. Don't include any protected information. Potential employers can't ask you for these things, so you don't want to list it on your resume. And most importantly, don't ever falsify information on your resume. So that includes dates at jobs, job titles, and responsibilities. This can get you into a lot of trouble. If you are hired for a position and it turns out down the line that you cannot perform because you lied on your resume, there are severe consequences for that, and even so much as losing your employee rights. So don't do it. Just be honest. Okay.
Ben, can I interrupt you for just a minute? We have a question in the
Sure.
chat. Richard's asking, I currently have a second job in retail. Should this be included if it has little connection to education?
So again, that kind of goes back to, I guess it depends on how much job history you have, right? So, and you can take your skills from that. So it may be in retail, but maybe that's where you start to highlight your skills. So, customer service skills, people skills, leadership skills. So you can list it if you need to have it for work history, but maybe instead of listing, your retail job duties, you focus more on the skills that you are gleaning from that position.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so resume layout. So we've talked about all of the content and the things that you should have on your resume, but as you have seen from our beginning exercise, the layout and the appearance of your resume is just as important. So a resume should never be more than 2 pages. like I had said, somebody is only spending maximum of 20 seconds looking at your resume. So if you have a 4-page resume, it's not all going to be seen. So 1 to 2 pages max. Please use universal fonts. So you want to use the same font throughout and choose a professional font. So something like Times New Roman or Arial. You don't want to have wingdings on your resume. At least a 12-point font size. So if you have so much information on your resume that it's several pages long and you are trying to fit it onto 2 pages by decreasing the font size, that just means that you need to edit out your content. So keep it 12-point, be consistent with your layout. So if you're going to have underlining, capitalizing, bolding, and such, just make sure that it's consistent throughout. And you're going to want to have it, aligned properly. Aligned to the left is usually the best way to do it. It just looks nicer. It looks cleaner. Margins. Your margins should be at about 1 inch. So that'll allow you to include more on your resume without adding another page. You want to have good white space. So white space makes your resume look more organized and easier to follow for a recruiter. Use bullet points for emphasis, like we had said before on one of the resumes that we looked at. It's easier to scan and it adds more white space. So again, it's just more clear for the recruiter to get through the information. And last but not least, please be sure to spell and grammar check your resume. There's nothing worse than putting in so much work and creating a beautiful formatted resume with great content, but you have spelling or grammatical errors in it. Here is an example, and you can tell me what you think of this resume, what you think may be good or bad about it. But you can see it's just, in my opinion, your eye is drawn straight to the center. Everything feels pretty clustered. While there are bullet points, they're not consistent. Everything's a bit scattered, and it's really hard to make your way through this information and take from it what we would need to determine if you're the right candidate for a job. Okay, I had mentioned a little bit previously about software, so resume reading software. So we'll talk a little bit about that now. What is resume parsing software? It's software that stores, organizes, and analyzes information from your resume. And so it's a way for employers to then be able to search for keywords and other criteria that they may take from the job description. And so a lot of industries are starting to use this now. They use it to try and find the best fit for a job during the application process. It's also a nice way for them to be able to save time and money. So knowing that some employers are using this, you want to make sure that your resumes are created in a way to be able to work with that software, because you don't want to get lost in that shuffle and your resume never even be getting in to be seen. So you don't want to be too fancy. Like we said, keep it standard, keep it traditional. Many applicant tracking systems are converting your resume to another format. So you're going to want to have separated blocks of information with a consistent format throughout. It's easier for the software to pull it that way. Stick with universal fonts like we've already talked about, and then save your resume in several different file types. You can save it in a PDF, in a Word doc. Sometimes some prospective employers may even want it in like a rich text format, but most standard, and especially for the resume parsing software, is a Word doc. So make sure that you save it that way. You're going to want to avoid tables and complex graphics because, again, the software cannot distinguish that. So your information is going to be missed. And one more time, pull keywords and language from the job description. I know we've talked about this several times, but it's very important that you're pulling that from the job description because like I said, it helps a recruiter connect you to that job. But also this software. So the software is looking for those words. Plus, it shows that you as an applicant are aware of this technology that's being used and that you've taken the time to go and pull their job description and thoroughly read through it and edit your resume for it. It shows that you're very serious about it. So where do I begin? I'm going to keep saying it. Have the job description of the position that you're applying for right there with you. You're going to ask yourself, what do I want to emphasize most about myself and my teaching career? If you're making a career change, remember to include your transferable skills. So going back to the question that we had earlier about should I include my retail job? Yes, you can include it because it is your experience, but you're going to want to include it in a way that you're using transferable skills. So you want the employer to see that, yeah, your experience is in retail, but it does make you a good candidate because XYZ. You're going to lay out your basic formats. You're going to go back to those 3 choices that we talked about at the beginning and decide which one is best for your particular situation and lay that format out. You know what the components should be for each resume. So then you just have to kind of fill it in for that format that you choose. And from there, you're just going to fill in the blanks. Where does it end? Well, your resume never ends. You're always going to be working on it. And this is going back to, having that job description for every job that you're applying for. You're going to tailor your resume for every single one of those because every job is not the same. They're going to be looking for different things, and you need to be able to show how you meet those criteria. So you're going to write it again, and then you're going to edit it. After that, you're going to want to ask at least 2 other people to take a look at your resume and then give you some feedback on it. After you've received that feedback, you're going to need to be open to using that feedback and actually going in and changing it. So again, like I just said, you're going to rewrite your resume based on every job that you apply for. So in that sense, your resume is never finished. You're always growing. You're always going to be adding to it. You're always going to be changing it up a little bit. And that's exactly what you want. So that's the end of my presentation today. Does anybody have any final questions?
We have a couple in the chat for you.
Okay.
So Willa asks, if I coach softball, would I be able to put it in? Where would I include coaching?
Okay.
It's a different age range than I have experience with in the classroom.
If it's a different age range than the classroom, it's still a transferable skill, right? So, with coaching softball, you're going to have leadership skills. You're going to have, that's still experience working with children. So yeah, I would definitely include that. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about, you're only going to want to include like interest in extracurriculars if it's applicable to the job that you're applying for. And so definitely coaching and outside recreational activities with kids, that would definitely be applicable.
Great, great. And then Joy asks, same district, but different positions. Include just a bullet for the school district or different positions?
Same school district, but different positions. So there's 2 different ways that you can do that. And I think there was an example, I don't remember which slide that was on, but you can list the district with your most recent, but then you can also make a note under the other positions that you've held. If you've only ever been, if that's the entirety of your work experience, you can break it out to kind of be able to dig deeper. But again, you're not going to want to list the same job duties over and over again. That's where you're going to want to make sure that you're talking about your accomplishments and feature the certain things that you accomplished in each role.
Great. And then Jenny asks, should we add a cover sheet?
Excuse me. If the job posting is asking for a cover letter, then I would definitely add a cover letter.
Great, Great. There are a few other questions, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So I'll ask, would Ethan's resume, the third example from the beginning of the presentation, pass the resume parsing system since it had some graphic features?
Yes, because those graphic features, it was really just like bars. So we're not talking about throwing like pictures and tables and such in.
Great. And then one last question that kind of really caught my eye. It says, as interns, we have just finished the pre-service program. How do we include it on our resume? So they do not yet have a credential, but they obviously have some experience and some education. What is the best recommendation you have for adding that on their resumes?
Okay, so that might be a good option for that skills-based resume. That's where you're talking about you're putting your education front and center, and the experience. I'm assuming I'm not super familiar with the pre-service program, so I'm not sure what type of experience is going to be coming out of that. But that would be, I can just go back to that type of resume.
While you're looking
There we go.
on the County of Education website, there's a portion that talks about how to word that on your resume. I don't have the link because it was a few days ago, but it is in there if somebody wants to go through and look at the intern portion.
Great, thank you. I think that would probably fit in best with the skills based. So again, here you're talking about like your core skills, and then in your education. And in this particular example, he breaks down his education, not just of what he's his bachelor's degree, but then the relevant work within that degree. So that might be a good place for something like that. You know, you also have that space below for achievements. So there's definitely options on where you can add that in.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for your time and your willingness to share with us and really give us that human resources point of view. I know that there are some of you who did not yet get your question answered. I would encourage you to check out the resources that are on that intern resources website. I also just posted today some brand new resources that kind of link back to our Educator Pathways website to check out additional videos and supports around resumes and cover letters. And we will be sharing additional stuff with you tomorrow. So if you have lingering questions, please do reach out to intern@sdcoe.net. And we're happy to help you with that. And once you kind of really get your resumes built and you're feeling confident and they're ready to share, we would encourage you to share them with us. We keep them on file and we organize them by credential type. Oftentimes, school districts will reach out to us and ask if we have any mild mod candidates, and then we share your resumes out with them. And so once they're ready to go, please do share them with us so that we can have them on file as well. I'm going to go ahead and turn this recording off.